regards to these distinguished panelists, and ladies and gentlemen, I look forward to hearing the pearls of wisdom that are about to be laid before us here. And I'm honored to have the opportunity to kick off this session. I'm only going to speak for about 10 minutes and then turn it over to the panel. There are, generally speaking, three questions that have to be addressed where the climate crisis is concerned. The first is a question that has been already answered to the satisfaction of most reasonable people in the world, and that question is, must we change? Because for 150 to 200 years, we have relied on carbon-based fuels for the dramatic progress in global civilization. And to this day, more than 80% of all the energy used in the world economy still comes from carbon-based fuels. And all of us must acknowledge what a daunting task lies ahead in making the switch to a low-carbon economy. It is bound to be filled with challenges. It already is, and thus naturally, the question still persists in the minds of many: do we really have to change the energy and transportation and agriculture and forestry systems in the world to shift to a low carbon pattern? And of course, the answer is yes, not only because the scientific community has been virtually unanimous for quite a long time in telling us that the evidence is just as clear as it is for the existence of gravity, but also now because the answer is coming from nature itself. We see in Chennai today record-breaking downpours that caused, for the first time since the 19th century, the Hindu newspaper they're unable to publish. There are enormous downpours and the consequent flooding and mudslides that result in every part of the world on a near continuous basis. A recent analysis said it's almost every day now. Indeed, the television news every evening is like a nature hike through the book of Revelation. We are now still emitting 110 million tons of heat-trapping man-made global warming pollution every day, and the cumulative amount that still resides in the atmosphere traps an amount of extra heat energy each day equivalent to that which would be released by 400,000 Hiroshima-class atomic bombs exploding every 24 hours. It's a big planet on which we live, but that is a lot of energy. More than 90% goes into the oceans, and that results in an incredible increase in the water vapor that is evaporated from the oceans into the air. The warmer air holds more water vapor, and as a result, when the hydrological cycle continues, as it always does, to move that water vapor over the land masses where it falls as precipitation, the amount of precipitation is much increased. The pattern has changed. There is an enormous amount, an increasing percentage of that amount of downpour in the one-time large storm events, like those that have been hitting Chennai today and in the days previous. That same extra heat energy, of course, as you know, also pulls the moisture out of the first many centimeters of the soil and results in longer and deeper and persistent droughts like the one that affects 97% of the state of California, in my country, the Korean Peninsula, much of southern Africa, all right now, and there are other places around the world. Sao Paulo state, which has put 140 Brazilian cities in water rationing over the past year, and the list goes on. The heat energy also melts the ice masses, not only the mountain glaciers, but now much more significantly has resulted in accelerated melting in Greenland and Antarctica, which is raising sea level quite significantly. I was in South Florida not long ago during the days of the supermoon, which resulted in one of the highest of the high tides, and there were fish from the ocean swimming in some of the streets of some of the cities in South Florida. It now happens very frequently with very high tides. And of course, the projections are for so much worse. And we have heard here in Paris, as we have heard at many of these conferences over the years, from the highly vulnerable island nations and from nations like Bangladesh, where many millions live in vulnerable delta regions. And we have heard from the physicians. The Lancet described earlier this year described the climate crisis as a medical emergency. The Canadian Medical Association did an analysis of how the climate changes are driving tick populations into areas that never had them before. Their prescription, their medical prescription, was to call upon doctors to become politically active to work for a change in Canada's global warming policy. And I might note I'm happy they have succeeded, as we heard in the plenary speech by Justin Trudeau on Monday. I could go on, but the answer to that first question, must we change, is clearly yes. There is another reason we must change, and I'm going to return to it as a segue to this panel. But let me briefly cover the other two questions, which are also relevant to this panel. The second question after must we change, the answer to which is yes. The second question is, can we change? And one of the dramatic differences in the reality we are living in these days of the Paris conference compared to previous conferences is that the business community, investors, technology developers, researchers, and others have brought the technologies of solar photovoltaics and wind power and efficiency in a variety of different forms, and battery storage and sustainable forestry and sustainable agriculture, to the point where these new approaches are extremely competitive with the legacy approaches that we are quite used to. Just today, Goldman Sachs Energy Group put out another study that said that the extra energy additions to the world energy economy from this year of 2015 through 2020 from solar photovoltaics and onshore wind will be as large as all of the additions to the world energy supply from natural gas, chiefly fracked gas, between 2010 and 2015. And those of you who pay attention to the energy markets and the energy economy know what an incredibly powerful development for energy markets was caused by that sudden addition of fractured gas. So we are seeing a tremendous advance in our ability to shift to renewable energy. We saw the best predictions available for advances in wind energy back in the year 2000, predicting that by 2010 the world would add 30 gigawatts of wind. We exceeded that projection by 12 times over. 2 years later, in 2002, the best available predictions were that the world would add 1 gigawatt of solar electricity per year by 2010. That goal was exceeded by 17 times over. Last year it was exceeded 48 times over. This year it will be exceeded more than 62 times over. That's an exponential curve. And it's not only the exponential cost down curve associated with renewable energy, which is having such a powerful impact, such an impact that was unexpected for so many. It is also the nature of this resource. It has zero marginal cost. The next kilowatt hour is free once your solar and wind is in place. That's what led TXU, one of the investor-owned electric utilities in the state of Texas, to just introduce its new rate plan for its customers in Texas, which affects the rates in the high peak use periods, but tells their customers from 9 p.m. at night until 6 a.m. the next morning, use all the electricity you want for free. For free. South Australia has had electricity for free. Several other regions of the world have already begun to adapt to the new realities of zero marginal cost. This also creates a vicious cycle for carbon-based electricity generation because the uptime each day for those facilities declines dramatically, because when you have a choice between paid and free, the choice is usually free. And so the renewables have a preference. So we are now seeing the explosive growth of rooftop solar, utility scale solar, onshore wind, and now offshore wind. And don't underestimate the significance of the Internet of Things and the digital economy and the new digital tools in empowering the utilization of efficiency improvements in everything that we do, so that demand destruction is much larger than many of these same analysts have predicted over the years. So one final point on that second question, can we change? There is a significant difference in markets when you have an incumbent product or service, or in this case, energy supply, challenged by a new opportunity. There is a difference when the new opportunity is more expensive than the incumbent compared to when it is cheaper than the incumbent. The difference between 0 degrees and 1 degree in the weather is a difference of more than 1 degree. It's a difference between ice and water. And the difference in markets between more expensive than and cheaper than is similarly a non-trivial difference, because the explosive growth in demand, once that threshold of cheaper than is crossed, it is quite remarkable. And we're seeing that threshold cross now in region after region all over the world. In my country, again, there have been 2 recent examples of states that ran a transparent, open competition for the provision of new electricity generation, which in both cases turned out to be a competition between gas-fired generation and solar photovoltaic generation. In the state of Minnesota and in the state of Colorado, in both of those competitions, solar won hands down. In the state of Nevada, Warren Buffett just signed a contract purchasing new electricity generation from photovoltaics for 3.87 cents per kilowatt hour, a figure that was just stunning to many who thought we might never get there. So the answer to that second question, can we change, is clearly yes, we can. Now the third question, must we change? Yes. Can we change? Yes. Will we change? That's what Paris is all about. But the answer that will come from here in Paris will come not only from the final text of an agreement that the national governments will sign, but from the business community, from the NGOs, and from the investor community. So I want to make just a couple more points in closing. I said that there are other reasons why we must change. Investors need to look at the pattern that is unfolding, lest they be trapped holding stranded assets. There's a new movie coming out from Hollywood called The Big Short. Many of you read the book, The Big Short. It was about the catastrophe of subprime mortgages, you know, the ones they decided in the banking community that the traditional reluctance to give mortgages to people who could not make a down payment and had no ability to make monthly payments could be circumvented if you just got millions of them and lumped them together and securitized them with some illusory financial instrument and then bundled them and sold them into the global market. It turned